The Elysian fleet drifted dead in space, facing extinction, all hope lost until a human captain received their desperate plea. Captain Jake Hartwell stared at the flickering distress signal on the view screen of the ESS Odyssey. The message, translated roughly from an alien language, spoke of a fleet stranded in a remote sector, ravaged by a lethal plague. Tens of thousands of lives hung in the balance. Jake clenched his jaw. The signal came from an uncharted region of space. The alien species called Elysians were complete unknowns to humanity. Attempting a rescue would be a dangerous leap into the void. But Jake had never been one to turn his back on those in need, human or alien. He would not let an entire civilization perish. Extinction was not an option on his watch. Jake turned to his crew. "Set course for the stranded fleet. We're going in." As the Odyssey launched toward the distant sector, Jake knew they were venturing into uncharted territory that could spell their doom. But someone had to answer the desperate call. If not Jake and his crew, who else would save the Elysians from total annihilation? The Odyssey dropped out of FTL, decelerating into real space. Jake stood up from the captain's chair as the view screen filled with the sight of the Elysian fleet. Hundreds of alien ships drifted aimlessly, many trailing atmosphere from jagged hull breaches. Scorch marks and blast damage covered their hulls. These ships had clearly seen heavy combat before falling to the plague. "Damn," Jake muttered under his breath. He turned to the comms officer. "Ensign Halsey, open a hailing frequency." "Channel open, sir," Halsey replied. Jake took a breath. "This is Captain Jake Hartwell of the ESS Odyssey, representing the United Earth Federation. We come in peace and offer assistance to your people." A tense moment passed. Then a deep, rumbling voice came over the speakers, the universal translator struggling to keep up. "This is Admiral Zorrex of the Elysian Expeditionary Force. Why have you approached our fleet, human? We have nothing of value to offer you." Zorrex's scarred face appeared on the view screen. His four eyes narrowed in suspicion. His grey skin stretched taut over his angular features. Jake held up his hands in a placating gesture. "Admiral Zorrex, we intercepted your distress signal and came to help. We have medical supplies and personnel who can assist in finding a cure for the plague that's ravaging your people." Zorrex's eyes widened in surprise. "You would risk the lives of your crew to aid a species you have never encountered. Why?" "Because it's the right thing to do," Jake said firmly. "We cannot stand by and watch as an entire civilization faces extinction. Let us help you, Admiral." Zorrex was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Very well, Captain Hartwell. We will accept your assistance. But know this, if you betray us, there will be consequences." Jake inclined his head. "Understood, Admiral. We'll prepare a shuttle to dock with your flagship immediately." As the channel closed, Jake turned to his medical officer. "Dr. Reeves, assemble your team and gather whatever supplies you need. We're heading over to the Elysian ship." Ethan nodded, his brow furrowed. "I'll do my best, Captain, but we know next to nothing about Elysian physiology. Finding a cure won't be easy." "I have faith in you, Doc," Jake said, clapping Ethan on the shoulder. "If anyone can crack this plague, it's you." Jake strode off the bridge, heading for the shuttle bay. He knew they were racing against time. Every moment they delayed, more Elysians succumbed to the plague. As the shuttle docked with Zorrex's flagship, Jake stepped onto the alien vessel, Ethan and his medical team close behind. The air was thick with the stench of sickness and death. Elysian crew members staggered through the corridors, their eyes glazed with fever. Zorrex greeted them, his posture rigid. "The plague has claimed millions of our people, Captain. Our fleet is all that remains of the Elysian race. If we fall, our species will be lost to the cosmos." Jake met Zorrex's gaze. "We won't let that happen, Admiral. My people will do everything in our power to find a cure." As Ethan and his team were led to the ship's medical bay, Jake turned to his chief engineer. "Cassidy, take your team and start repairs on the Elysian ships. We need to get this fleet back in working order." Cassidy grinned. "Aye, Captain. We'll have these ships purring like kittens in no time. Jake allowed himself a small smile. They had a long road ahead of them, but for the first time since receiving the distress signal, he felt a glimmer of hope. The Odyssey had arrived in time, and they would not rest until the Elysians were saved from the brink of extinction. Days turned into weeks as the humans and Elysians worked side by side to save the dying fleet. Captain Jake Hartwell found himself constantly butting heads with Admiral Zorx, the proud and stubborn Elysian commander. Zorx insisted on maintaining strict Elysian hierarchies and traditions, even in the face of the plague's devastation. He demanded that his crew follow complex rituals and protocols, slowing down the relief efforts. Jake pulled Zorx aside, his frustration boiling over. "Admiral, we need to adapt if we're going to beat this thing. Your traditions are important, but right now, speed and efficiency are critical." Zorx's four eyes narrowed. "You expect us to abandon our ways, human? Our traditions are what define us as Elysians. Without them, we are nothing." "I'm not asking you to abandon anything," Jake said, trying to keep his voice level. "But we need to be flexible. We're in uncharted territory here, and the old rules may not apply." Zorx shook his head, his grey skin flushing with anger. "You humans are all the same, always pushing for change without considering the consequences. The Elysian way has served us for millennia. We will not bend to your whims." Jake bit back a sharp retort, knowing that arguing further would only waste precious time. He turned on his heel and stalked away, his jaw clenched. Despite the tensions between the leaders, the human and Elysian scientists were making progress. Dr. Ethan Reeves and Talner, the lead Elysian researcher, had been working tirelessly to unravel the plague's secrets. Ethan hunched over a microscope, studying a sample of infected tissue. Talnor stood beside him, his long fingers flying over a holographic display. "There's something odd about the plague's genetic structure," Ethan muttered. "It's almost as if it was engineered to specifically target Elysian physiology." Talner's eyes widened. "You're right, Dr. Reeves. This is no natural pathogen. It bears the hallmarks of Krodan bioengineering." Ethan looked up sharply. "The Krodans, who are they?" Talner's face darkened. "Our ancient enemies. They once sought to conquer the galaxy, but we thought they had been defeated centuries ago. If they have returned and created this plague as a weapon—" Ethan's stomach churned. The implications were staggering. He tapped his comm badge. "Captain Hartwell, Admiral Zorx, please come to the medical bay immediately. We've made a critical discovery." Minutes later, Jake and Zorx strode into the lab, their earlier argument temporarily forgotten in the face of this new development. "What have you found, Dr. Reeves?" Jake asked. Ethan took a deep breath. "We believe the plague is a bioweapon, engineered by a species called the Krodans to target the Elysians." Zorx slammed his fist on the table, his eyes blazing with fury. "The Krodans, I should have known they were behind this atrocity. We must strike back immediately, hit them before they can unleash this weapon on other worlds." Jake held up a hand. "Hold on, Admiral. We don't even know where the Krodans are or what their capabilities are. A preemptive strike could be suicide." "So you would have us cower in fear, waiting for our enemies to wipe us out?" Zorx snarled. "No, but we need more information before we act. Let me reach out to Earth, see if our intelligence networks have any data on the Krodans. In the meantime, we keep working on a cure and getting your fleet back on its feet." Zorx glared at Jake for a long moment. "Very well, Captain, but know this. If the Krodans are responsible for this plague, there will be a reckoning. The Elysian Expeditionary Force will not rest until they are brought to justice, with or without your help." Jake met Zorx's gaze unflinchingly. "Understood, Admiral. But let's focus on saving your people first, one battle at a time." As Zorx stormed out of the lab, Jake turned to Ethan. "Keep working, Doc. If the Krodans are behind this, we're going to need that cure more than ever." Ethan nodded grimly. The stakes had just gotten a lot higher, and time was running out for the Elysians, and possibly the galaxy as a whole. The blaring of alarms echoed through the corridors of the Odyssey as Captain Jake Hartwell raced onto the bridge. The viewscreen showed a massive Krodan warship dropping out of FTL, its weapons already charging. "Red alert! All hands to battle stations," Jake barked, sliding into the captain's chair. "Lieutenant Benson, status report." Max's fingers flew over the tactical console. "The Krodan ship is targeting the Elysian fleet, sir. They're charging their main cannon." Jake gritted his teeth. The Elysians were in no condition to fight, their ship still crippled by the plague and ongoing repairs. "Move the Odyssey into position to shield the fleet. Divert all power to forward shields and weapons." The deck shuddered as the Odyssey surged forward, placing itself between the Krodan ship and the vulnerable Elysians. The Krodan cannon fired, a searing beam of energy that slammed into the Odyssey's shields, making the whole ship groan under the strain. "Shields holding at 70%, Max reported, his face tense. "Returning fire." The Odyssey's advanced phaser arrays lanced out, striking the Krodan ship's shields in a dazzling display of light and energy. The enemy ship shuddered but remained intact, its own weapons glowing as it prepared for another assault. On the viewscreen, Jake watched in horror as the Krodan ship unleashed a barrage of missiles, not at the Odyssey but at the Elysian fleet. Zorex's flagship took the brunt of the attack, explosions blossoming along its hull as its weakened shields collapsed. "Zorex, come in," Jake shouted over the comm. "Admiral, your ship is heavily damaged. You need to evacuate immediately." There was a moment of static. Then Zorex's voice filled the bridge, strained but defiant. "We will not abandon our ship, Captain Hartwell. We will fight to the last." "Damn it, Zorex, there's no time for Elysian pride. Your people need you alive. Beam over to the Odyssey now." A tense heartbeat passed, then Zorex's voice returned, grudging but resolute. "Very well, Captain. Initiating transport." Jake turned to his first officer. "Commander Vickers, prepare to receive the Admiral and any survivors. Get them to the medical bay immediately." Vickers nodded, hurrying off the bridge as the ship shook again, another Krodan salvo impacting their shields. "Shields at 50%, Max called out. "Captain, we can't take much more of this." Jake's mind raced, searching for a solution. The Krodans were relentless, their weapons powerful. The Odyssey was the only thing standing between them and the complete annihilation of the Elysian fleet. The turbolift doors hissed open, and Zorex strode onto the bridge, his grey skin ashen with grief and rage. "My ship is lost, Captain. Hundreds of my crew dead. The Krodans will pay for this atrocity." Jake met Zorex's eyes, seeing the pain and anger reflected there. "We will make them pay, Admiral. Together." Zorex nodded grimly, moving to stand beside Jake. "What is your plan, Captain?" Jake brought up a schematic of the Krodan ship on the viewscreen. "There's a weakness in their shield grid, near the aft section. If we can hit it with a concentrated burst from our phasers and photon torpedoes, we might be able to punch through and damage their engines." Zorex studied the schematic, his four eyes narrowing. "A sound strategy, but we will need to get in close. The Krodans will not make it easy." "No, they won't," Jake agreed. "But we have to try. Max, prepare a full spread of torpedoes. Helm, plot an intercept course. We're going in." The bridge crew worked furiously as the Odyssey swung around, facing the Krodan ship head-on. The enemy vessel loomed before them, its weapons glowing with deadly intent. Jake glanced at Zorex, seeing the determination etched in the Admiral's alien features. "Fire on my command." The Krodan ship grew larger on the viewscreen, filling the bridge with its menacing presence. Jake's hand tightened on the armrest of his chair. "Steady, steady." The Odyssey shuddered as Krodan weapons impacted their shields, alarms blaring in warning. Jake's eyes never left the viewscreen. "Now! Fire!" A blinding barrage erupted from the Odyssey, phasers and torpedoes streaking toward the Krodan ship in a dazzling display of firepower. The enemy ship's shields flared, straining to repel the onslaught. For a moment, it seemed as though the Krodan defenses would hold. Then, in a brilliant flash of light, the Krodan ship's aft section exploded, debris spiraling out into space. The once mighty warship listed, its engines flickering and dying. Cheers erupted on the Odyssey's bridge as the crew watched their enemy's defeat. Jake slumped back in his chair, relief washing over him. They had done it. Against all odds, they had emerged victorious. Zorex turned to Jake, his eyes glinting with newfound respect. "You have fought with honor and courage, Captain Hartwell. The Elysian people owe you a great debt." Jake clasped Zorex's hand, feeling the weight of the moment. "We did this together, Admiral, your people and mine, united against a common foe. Let this be the beginning of a new era of cooperation and trust between us." As the Odyssey moved to assist the battered Elysian fleet, Jake knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult. The Crodans were still out there, and the plague continued to ravage the Elysians. But for the first time since this crisis began, he felt a glimmer of hope. With humans and Elysians working side by side, they just might have a chance to overcome the challenges that lay before them. In the aftermath of the Crodan attack, an exhausted but determined Ethan and Talna huddled over their lab equipment, the weight of the Elysians' fate resting on their shoulders. They had been close to a breakthrough before the battle, but the chaos and destruction had set them back. Ethan rubbed his eyes, the strain of countless sleepless nights catching up to him. "We can't give up now, Talna. Your people are counting on us." Talna nodded, his four eyes blinking in rapid succession. "I know, Ethan, I just wish we had more time." They dove back into their work, combining Ethan's knowledge of human medical technology with Talna's expertise in Elysian genetic engineering. Hours turned into days as they tweaked formulas, ran simulations, and tested countless iterations of the cure. Finally, after a particularly grueling session, Talnor looked up from his microscope, his face a mixture of disbelief and elation. "Ethan, I think we've done it. The latest version of the cure. It's working." Ethan rushed over, peering at the sample. The plague cells were rapidly deteriorating, overwhelmed by the cure's targeted genetic payload. He let out a whoop of joy, clasping Talna's shoulder. "We did it, my friend. We actually did it." Word of the cure spread like wildfire through the Elysian fleet. Jake and Zorex personally oversaw its distribution, watching with relief as the once ravaged ships began to come back to life. Elysians who had been on the brink of death were now sitting up, their eyes clear and their strength returning. In the midst of the celebrations, Jake and Zorex found a quiet moment to talk. They stood on the observation deck of Zorex's newly repaired flagship, gazing out at the stars. Zorex turned to Jake, his expression thoughtful. "When your ship first arrived, I thought you were just another species seeking to exploit us in our moment of weakness. But you have proven me wrong, Captain Hartwell. Your people have fought beside us, healed us, and shown us the value of cooperation and trust." Jake met Zorex's gaze, a smile tugging at his lips. "I'll admit, Admiral, I had my own doubts about working with an unfamiliar species, but your people have shown remarkable resilience and bravery in the face of this crisis. It's been an honor to stand with you." Zorex nodded, his posture straightening. "The honor has been ours, Captain, which is why I have a proposal for you and your people." Jake raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "The Crodans are still out there, and they will not stop until they have conquered or destroyed every species in their path. Alone, the Elysians and humans are vulnerable, but together, we could form an alliance, a united front against the Crodan threat. Your adaptability and ingenuity, combined with our technological prowess, we would be a formidable force." Jake considered Zorex's words, the gears turning in his head. An alliance between humans and Elysians had seemed impossible when they first met, their differences too vast to overcome. But now, after all they had been through together, it felt like the natural next step. He extended his hand to Zorex, a grin spreading across his face. "Admiral, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship." Zorex clasped Jake's hand, his grip firm and strong. "Indeed it is, Captain, indeed it is." As the Elysian fleet prepared to depart for their homeworld, the Odyssey and a contingent of human ships fell into formation around them. The sight was breathtaking, the sleek, silver ships of the Elysians interspersed with the bold, compact vessels of the humans. Two species, once strangers, now united in purpose and friendship. Jake settled into his captain's chair, feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment wash over him. They had come so far, overcome so much, and now, with the Elysians by their side, they were ready to face whatever challenges the galaxy had in store. He glanced at the view screen, at the vast expanse of stars stretching out before them. "Helm, set course for Zephyria. It's time to take our new friends home." The Odyssey surged forward, leading the way as the Allied fleet disappeared into the swirling vortex of FTL, ready to embark on a new chapter in the history of both their species. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.